Welcome everyone to today's Lunch and Learn with Resource YYC. Today we have Susan LaBelle, and we're really excited to hear her talk today. In case you're not aware, Resource YYC is a co-working space in Calgary, and we cater to professionals. So we have private office spaces, dedicated desks, and mail services. So if you're ever in need, check us out. Over to you, Susan.
Thanks very much, Rosemary, and thank you for everyone for joining today. If you've got questions, feel free to throw them in the chat throughout the presentation, and I'll answer them either as we go along or at the end of the day. Today, I'd like to talk to you about building the business case for maintenance and reliability improvements. It's one of those topics which, no matter where we are in our career, it seems to come up over and over again. And I thought I'd share with everybody some of the key tips and tricks that I've been using to present business cases primarily within oil and gas companies, mining companies, energy production, but it's really applicable across all industries. And it's something that we're asked to do on a regular basis, no matter what industry we're working in. So a little bit about myself. I usually skim through this real fast. You can look me up on LinkedIn if you want. I do not post very often, so you will not get spammed if you friend me. But basically, I've been working in the field of asset management, maintenance and reliability, continuous improvement for more than 25 years, primarily in oil and gas, mining, energy production. And this is my life. I hold a number of industry roles in the field and quite passionate about the topics of asset management, reliability, and maintenance. Today, what we're going to talk a little bit about is making sure that our alignment of our maintenance and reliability improvement activities to our organizational goals and objectives. How do we quantify the contributions of maintenance and reliability, and how we get started on our improvement journey? And one of the key things that we need to think about when we're doing this is how do we build that business case to convince others that they should come along for the ride with us? Okay, so we're really looking about what are the contributions of our proposed maintenance improvement activities as we're moving forward. First up, let's be honest, without a map, the only place you're going to be is lost. This expression completely sums up the challenges that face many of our companies or our organizations as they embark on these reliability and maintenance improvement efforts. So regardless of whether you're starting a major transformation project or just trying to tackle some of those small little chronic issues, you need to know where you're starting from, where your destination is in 1 year, 3 years, 5-year look ahead. We can look into our crystal balls for longer than 5 years, but with so many changes in our business drivers, unexpected pandemics, all these sorts of things, they'll all come into play in a longer time frame. So what I really suggest is that we address the current realities and set ourselves up to be a bit adaptable for the future. So the big question, how do we go about this? None of us wants to be the leader of or work on a well-intentioned, extensive effort where lots of resources have been developed to devoted to a project with very few tangible results. To demonstrate that continuous improvements, we need a plan. And the first thing we need to do is figure out where we're starting from, figure out our destination, and how we're going to close the gaps in a way that don't really disrupt our organization's primary goal of profitability, making your product cost effectively, or delivering our taxpayer services such as water, wastewater, transit, that sort of thing. But we need to be able to deliver it in a way that takes us towards our destination. So first up, what I really like to do is start with the company or the organization's overall corporate strategic plan. There's typically 4 main pillars to this, whether they're documented separately, whether they're all written up together. Typically, every place I've ever worked in, every company I've dealt with, or every municipal organization, there's always a financial strategy, there's a people strategy, an operations strategy, and what I call an asset management strategy. And the senior leaders for your organization are going to have a vision in mind. Before we even embark on any reliability and maintenance improvement initiative, we first up have to determine and prove that there's an opportunity for improvement. When we start to look at what are the business drivers behind the destination, it helps us to evaluate this. We're going to want to understand from a corporate strategy point of view, are we in a commodity or a specialized products business? Do we have multiple locations or a single facility? Do you have many competitors? Are you providing a public service, as I said, like a hospital, community rec center, water treatment? So what's your business environment? And first thing when we're presenting forward our improvement opportunity is to recognize is the opportunity real or is it just a perception? And we need to make sure that we balance off finances, people, operations, and asset management as we're moving forward here. Like to present a couple of ideas. The vocabulary in this space gets really mixed up over time. One of the things I wanted to just show you real quickly here is this asset life cycle and asset management versus maintenance management. So if we think about it, asset management is the coordinated efforts of the organization to deliver value from its assets. Okay, so in the blue section here, we've got our upfront capital investment projects, major initiatives, that sort of thing. That might take anywhere from 1 to 5 years. And that's really when we create the capacity to deliver our product. Okay, in this middle section here, where I've put the highlight around maintenance management, this is our operate and maintain phase of the life cycle. It could last for 25, 50 years. The operators use the capacity to deliver our product, and the maintenance folks and the reliability team maintains that capacity. So together, ops and maintenance deliver whatever our product is, whether it is riders on our transit system, whether it is megawatts of electricity delivered to homes, whether it is barrels of oil or tons of ore. Okay. And at the end of the life cycle, we retire capacity. So what I'm really wanting to understand here and make sure that we bring across is that asset management is the entire life cycle. The Australians call it lust to dust or conception to reclamation. Okay, and our maintenance management, where our M&R folks and our improvement initiatives focuses in, is on this operate and maintain phase of the life cycle. Okay, so one of the key things that we can see out of this is maintenance and reliability really contributes to the value of the organization from maintaining that capacity to produce. And where we tend to do this is we start to look at our organizational objectives around shear, and this lets us impact the economics through our availability. So pretty much every organization, when we start to look at where the value comes from, it can be categorized into safety, health, and the environment. Okay, so those ones are pretty obvious. You know, no safety incidents, improved, no health impact, not only to our own workers, but the public at large. But also we want to meet or exceed our environmental regulations and start our transition towards more recyclables, more renewables, those sorts of things. So we've got a lot of environmental things packaged up. When we're pulling together our maintenance and reliability metrics and our business case, we're primarily focused in on a couple of areas. And the prime one is the economics and the regulatory compliance. So regulatory compliance is frequently about cost effectively meeting those regulatory obligations, whether it's for testing, whether it's for looking for emissions leaks, all of those sorts of things, and then being able to prove that we actually did them. From an economics point of view, when we look at this in terms of our business case, a lot of it includes production loss, availability to put more throughput through our existing equipment, avoiding repairs, those sorts of things. So we have to think our focus for bringing value is usually quantified into SHEER categories, SHEER. So when we're going forward, as I said, it's really important to know where we're starting from and where we're headed. So first up, we need to look at our as is. Okay. Typically, what we do is a quick assessment or an evaluation of the current state with input from a broad group of stakeholders, and it really sets our as is. It lets us have common vocabulary and direction, and different stakeholders are going to have different perspectives on where you are. There's a couple of different options to determine where you are, and one of the first things you might want to do is to figure out what kind of improvement effort you're pursuing. Are you tackling a maintenance and reliability or a more holistic asset management initiatives? For the M&R type improvement efforts, there are a number of different published resources that can help you guide your assessment questions. So some of the examples might be the maintenance maturity grid that's outlined in Uptime 3rd edition by John Campbell, James Reyes-Picknell. SMRP from the US has some specialist M&R grids as well, or pyramids. And there's a number of different ones out there that you can find through consulting companies, a Google search, all of those sorts of things. Okay, if we are specifically looking more at that broader end-to-end with an asset management assessment, I'd suggest people look at the ISO 55000 suite of standards or the GFMAM landscape. Okay, regardless, figure out where you're starting from, and then figure out where you're going to target your efforts. Okay, so when we look at this, if we're looking at this blue chart on the left here, most companies choose to be competent in all of the areas and excellent in the areas with competitive advantage. We can't tackle everything at once. And how do we prioritize our efforts over the next 1 year, 3-year time frame? As you can see, the blue up arrows here are really showing there's 3 of these 10 boxes or 10 categories where we're going to tackle this, and we're going to address not only our low-hanging fruit, simplistic M&R improvement efforts, build up those quick wins to get that commitment from our stakeholders, while we're taking these bigger steps on some of these bigger prizes that won't have those immediate results, but have a bigger impact on the bottom line. Fundamentally, once we know where we're going, where we're starting from, we need to know where our destination is. So just as a kid doesn't move from learning to swim to making the Olympic swim team in 1 summer, we can't expect to move overnight. So we're going to come back to our overall business strategy, the objectives of our proposed, how the business strategy connects into that asset management strategy, and then look at our M&R initiative and what we're proposing and how it's going to connect back in there. So that brings us to the next topic, which is really about prioritizing. We probably have this huge long list of awesome opportunities. And in a utopic world of unlimited resources, both dollars and people, we could snap our fingers and make changes instantly. We could tackle everything at once. The reality is we can't solve world hunger in 1 step. We need to take it community by community, country by country to meet this noble goal. And our M&R improvement initiatives and projects are the same. This is actually from a particular initiative that I went through, and you can see all the different projects. Those little numbers on those stars represent the different ideas that people came up with. And so what we need to identify is the gaps and prioritize our improvement efforts. Tend to evaluate the effort, this low to high. I usually think of low as something which could be executed by 1 or 2 people in 1 department within a couple of weeks. Okay, so it might be a quick initiative, do some calculations, those sorts of things. On the other hand, high effort would be anything that affects a whole bunch of business processes, a lot of teams. Maybe you're trying to update your EAM or your CMMS systems. Okay, or you want to, those sorts of things would be high effort. You're affecting the entire company at once. Checking out a new type of oil in a piece of rotating equipment as a pilot project, fairly low effort. In terms of value, that's really where most of what we're going to talk about here in terms of our presentation is focused on. So I'm going to pop to the next slides. Low value doesn't bring a lot of value to your company, and high obviously has high impact, primarily measured in terms of dollars. As I said, whether this is profitability or taxpayer dollars spent wisely. So in terms of value, I'd like to share with you a couple of the common equipment performance metrics. This comes out of the SMRP Best Practices 5th edition. I've got the reference for you on the next slide. These definitions are fairly important, and I really like this particular picture. So what you're seeing on it is that our total available time is 365 days times 24 hours a day. This is 8,760 hours in a year. And that 8,760 is a pretty important number. When we're looking at it, as we said, the maintainers are delivering the capacity of our equipment or our plant to produce. And the operators are using that availability of the equipment to make our product. So this availability number here that you're seeing with scheduled hours of production minus our scheduled and unscheduled downtime and our idle time is really the key number in terms of how maintenance and reliability impact our availability of equipment and impact our ability to be profitable. Okay, so most of our improvement initiatives are really focused on ensuring that that equipment is available to run. Okay, so a lot of the ideas around getting more predictive maintenance, particularly using on-condition maintenance that's performed while the equipment is running, only taking it offline when we see that the equipment is actually moving into its PF interval window. And then we can plan the work, get the parts, coordinate the crews, bring it down safely to minimize our mean time to repair. We are focused on maximizing availability. I also thought I would show you this picture because a lot of our typical improvement projects are scalable depending on whether you've got a single location or multiple facilities where you want to pilot them all at once. A lot of the M&R initiatives and proposed improvement projects that you come up with or your staff come up with or your clients come up with usually fit in one of these categories. So one of the most typical have to do with our asset tactics, our integrity management plan. So how are we going to make decisions around repair, replace, retire, revise, upgrade, and maintain our assets or our equipment? We also see an awful lot of initiatives that focus on scheduling, our work order management, so planning, scheduling, turnarounds, that sort of thing. We look at maybe optimizing what we're doing right now. And then a lot of this is supported by data and metrics, okay? Know what you own, know what the value is to your company, know what its current condition is around our production and asset data, our management of change. All of these sort of things generally are housed within our enterprise asset management systems. And so those are the areas where we see most of our M&R business cases and proposed improvement projects falling. When we want to look at this, we want to go back and look at our business context and strategy. So if your company or location is growing rapidly from a startup to a large producer, maybe where our initiative might be more focused development of your maintenance business processes to enable the transition from being people dependent to process dependent. Or perhaps you're experiencing a lot of frequent part stockouts or things like that that really didn't matter when you were had a lot of redundant equipment, but it's going to absolutely cripple your ability to produce as you start to put more throughput through your machines. I think a lot of this is around understanding that maintenance is not just a one-of, it's a highly integrated piece of our overall deliverables as an organization. Okay. So as I said, our goal here is about the coordinated efforts of the organization to deliver value. We're looking at the maintenance, the operate and maintain phase of the life cycle, and we're really focused on maintaining capacity by delivering availability. Most or many of us started out our careers with this culture of fix it when it breaks, and we had little opportunity to influence what jobs or activities we would be confronted with when we walked in on a Monday morning. As we started to expand this, we started to get into recognizing that maintenance wasn't just executing repairs, and we really wanted to understand the better maintenance management. This IPSETA model, 6-block model, whatever you're calling it, where we're really focused in terms of delivering availability, tends to have to do with the planning and the scheduling of our work, and then minimizing the offline time as we're executing it. Okay, so to build your business case, what we really need to understand is what's the value of that extra capacity and availability. It's incredibly difficult to quantify the savings from more effective predictive maintenance and preventive maintenance activities, or even the benefits of improved planning and scheduling. And this ability to deliver extra availability and additional production is really the easiest way to do this. Okay. In a simplified business case where we produce, so no redundancy. Okay. So remember, we have no redundancy here, and we can sell everything we can produce. From a simplified business case point of view, what if we're making 100,000 items a day? Whether it's barrels of oil, tons of fertilizer, boxes of cereal, so many megawatts of electricity, all of that sort of thing. I think you would agree 0.1% of this is an extra 100 items a day. Now, if our net back, so our profit margin is $10 an item, an extra 100 items per day is worth 36,500 items a year, or $365,000. Yes, it's worth it to chase 100 items a day. We often see this, particularly when we've got our commodities. So your clients are in oil and gas, your particular company is manufacturing something. If this profit margin, okay, we want to look at how much that extra 100 items a day is worth to us. And I think that's really where we start to come into it. What is the value of that extra 36,500 items a year? The other number that really starts to come into this, oops, we want to ask ourselves what that additional profit is. Okay, the next one. As I talked about earlier, 24 hours a day times 365 days a year is 8760. Okay, so I rounded up. So 0.1% is 9 hours a year. Our previous slide used a 0.1% improvement in throughput as an example. That 0.1% improvement is worth 9 extra hours of operation on your equipment per year. Okay, particularly in a production environment where we can sell everything we produce and we have no spare capacity, every hour can have this huge financial impact on our company. For those of you in the public sector, this is a first time I was working with one of the municipal water, and they'd never really thought about the value of an extra 9 hours a year of production. What if our proposal for an M&R improvement project around asset health monitoring, okay, so what's the condition of their running equipment, gives us the ability to predict upcoming failures, or to say, you know what, this equipment's still in good shape, keep going. We don't need to take it down for a repair just because it hit a particular time. What if, knowing that we do have some imminent changes coming or a repair is going to be needed, what if we could plan and schedule it and shorten up the time that equipment's offline for our repairs? What's that worth to us? Think about this. In your area or your facility or your clients' companies, how often do you see more than 9 hours of downtime for an equipment failure or for an extended repair duration because we didn't have the parts there? How often does this occur? What if you could produce for an extra 9 hours a year? For those of you specifically looking at that move from reactive to proactive maintenance, I read this great article, and Jim Reyes-Picknell, it'll be under James. If you Google him under Canadian manufacturing, he's got a great article there that talks about building the efficiency gains perspective from going from reactive to proactive maintenance. Okay, and that's a nice complement to this 0.1% is 9 hours a year, 0.1% of our production, whatever industry you're in, think about the value of that. The other thing that we often see is what metrics are we going to use, or financial measures. Okay, so your improvement project has to effectively compete for a limited pool of dollars, a limited number of resources within your company. The most commonly used financial measures within the heavy resource industries are return on investment and net present value. They're frequently, sometimes internal rate of return. They're really commonly used to compare across and between improvement opportunities inside companies. The other one we see often used, particularly for OPEX, operational expenses, OPEX dollar improvement initiatives, is simple payback. Okay, so a payback that comes with less than a year is almost a no-brainer. I know for me, if my staff come forward with a great improvement idea that they've come up with, I often look at it, I say, what if it takes twice as long? What if it costs twice as much as expected? Okay, what if we only get half the benefits or the value that somebody is proposing? If it still pays back in less than a year, go ahead, right? That's usually well within the signing authority of the direct supervisor without having to look to the larger organization for a lot of sign-offs. Thought I'd share with you a couple of typical oil and gas business case examples. So every decision made within an organization, other than the obvious health, safety, and the environmental one, really starts to require that discussion or the look at both the impact to the cost and the revenue, or both. And when cost is often the focus, and we need to practice presenting and justifying our decisions based on that impact on revenue as well. So we get these questions. Should I send somebody to work overtime or start a midnight call out to address a current downtime issue? Okay. One of the things we want to think about is that the way we do this, if we work overtime, okay, our costs go up because we need to pay the worker, sometimes at a premium, that sort of thing. But if we avoid X number of hours of downtime and we save a certain number of dollars in production, or effectively continue to produce when the equipment might have been offline, we gain extra revenue. So we're going to have that balance between the extra cost of the overtime, okay, and the extra dollars that we make through that production. We often get asked, what if I want to implement a predictive maintenance program or extend the existing one? What does that do for me? So often I'm going to hire in a service, so a third-party specialized service, which has increased my contracted services costs. But instead of doing a full-on preventive maintenance teardown regularly on a set number of hours, I'm going to start to monitor my equipment health and its condition. And I'm only going to take that equipment offline for repairs when it's absolutely necessary. So this reduces the frequency of overhauls. Okay, so reduced labor and materials costs, reduces my downtime, and improves my production throughput. So the volume and the quality, which gives me increased revenue. And frequently our predictive maintenance assessment tools are non-intrusive. So they don't require us to shut down the equipment. Equipment is best when it either stays running or stays in standby mode. People get hurt because if something crashes unexpectedly, is generally when people get hurt. So from a safety perspective, a throughput perspective, and a reliability, we're trying to keep that equipment running steady state as long as possible. Okay. Another one, we've got a small mobile crane to lift our heavy loads. Same sort of thing. I'm going to have to probably get capital dollars up front to buy this crane. but chances are it's going to reduce our labor costs. It's going to keep our people safer, and it very will likely decrease the duration of the shutdown, okay, or the time that the equipment's offline as I'm performing this maintenance work, which leads to increased throughput and generally greater revenue. Another typical one, spare part stocking levels. Maintenance folks are notorious for wanting every single part in the warehouse at all times. Okay, they want 1,000,001 of everything, and our warehouse folks, who usually are dealing a lot with the finances and the carrying costs, are trying to minimize the number of parts in stocking, okay, in the warehouse. So we have this back and forth here. How much does it cost me to capital costs and working capital is tied up in my warehouse parts, plus somebody keeping them warm, dry, counted, that sort of thing, versus what's my throughput worth if I don't have those parts on hand? Often we can use this to justify having, say, a centrally located single large spare, okay, rather we're not talking the small stuff here, but a new crankshaft sitting in a regional district might make a difference. Okay, so we're going to start to look at that sort of thing and use this balance between the unavailability of the equipment, what the additional revenue is through producing, and all of the labor costs that go along with it. In oil and gas and in mining, I have typically found that the increased production throughput and selling that far, far outweighs any extra labor costs. So keep that in mind when you're going through. The other one I've been involved with more than once is we need to put in an enterprise asset management system, or we need to do an upgrade to our CMMS, computerized maintenance management system. So for those of you who are less intimately familiar with it, these are the tools and the software tools that we use to manage our maintenance activities. Planning, scheduling, turnarounds, knowing what equipment we own, all of that sort of thing. Not in sales here at all, but the common ones that you will know are Maximo, the SAP PM module, Oracle, JD Edwards, Hippo, Fix, MarsWorks. There's probably 100 of them out there. I'm very much software agnostic, but if we have to go through an upgrade, what we're really trying to sell this on is to say, can we do a better job with our planning and scheduling? Can we ease up and make it easier for us to manage our maintenance activities? Okay, to assign people in that IPSITA or IPSECO model to being able to execute and focus our attention where it's needed. Once we've got a whole bunch of this work and we've understood what are high value to the organization, okay, which ones are high effort versus low effort, we tend to plot them out on the chart here, okay? Obviously, things that are very low effort to the organization, okay, with the highest value, we're going to do those ones first, okay? The ones in that consider might be somewhere we've got a relatively low effort if we're trying it out as a pilot in one of our locations before we're rolling it out across the whole organization. It could be higher value and higher effort if we've got 25 field locations or gas plants or something like that, but we might want to start it at the beginning there and prove it out. Obviously, anything that's a really high effort and low value to the organization, don't do it unless there is a compelling reason for it, like a new regulatory regime or something like that. If that happens, try to minimize the amount of effort to put that one in there, while obviously still meeting our regulatory compliance. Okay. As we're talking about building our business case for maintenance and reliability improvements, it's really important to understand as we do our value evaluation and our effort evaluation, what box these proposed initiatives fit in before we're taking them forward to the decision makers looking for money. I'm assuming that most of you in the audience here today are either maintenance and reliability practitioners, or you're trying to sell your clients on how you're going to take on your awesome offering and be able to get it approved to implement at a particular client. Okay, keep in mind, the other thing we need to think about is who are the stakeholders involved with this. Just as I talked about effort, if it's done by 1 or 2 people in one team, okay, it makes it fairly easy. One of the things we can see is that in terms of delivering this, maintaining this capacity to produce, all the other stakeholders involved, okay, we need to involve maintenance, operations, engineering, our corporate asset management teams, maybe our major projects teams, supply management. So this is purchasing, inventory, contracts, accounting, finance, EH&S, and regulatory. Our integrity teams are really the regulatory teams around our pressure equipment, our pipelines. Maybe we've got things under our EQ&P, all of that sort of thing. And we want to understand that from a stakeholder perspective. As we do our getting our critical success factors, do not underestimate this cultural and stakeholder engagement, particularly in terms of our senior management commitment and having local champions. We're talking about building a business case for maintenance and reliability improvements here. And it's important to get the right people from a change management perspective working with you as you present it forward. We need to realize that our timelines to implement and realize tangible results can sometimes take a while. As I said, look into your crystal ball 1, 3, and 5 years out, and you may want to put forward some of these quick wins or smaller pilot style initiatives to get some, build up some confidence that you can do this in the short run, okay, as you continue to work forward on those medium or longer term projects, okay? We need to get people feeling that not only is it possible, but there is incentive and there is value there if we persevere through some of these longer projects. As I said, start small, build success, and be sure to communicate everything that's happening along the way. Building your business case for maintenance and reliability is not just about presenting a technical and financially driven project forward. It's also about the change management, getting the communications, and getting that widespread support for bringing it forward. It goes through a lot of different channels, and a lot of different stakeholders need to be involved. And finally, as you're building your business case for maintenance and reliability, you need to think about what are your next steps for getting your excellence there, moving it forward. We're not stuck in the past, we're looking ahead to the future. So I'm just looking at the time and I'm thinking, phew, I managed to do this. What we talked about in terms of our building our business case was trying to think about how we align our maintenance improvement activities to our organizational goal and objectives, quantifying those contributions, and how to get started. Without a map, the only place you'll be is lost. Some of us are going to take the express bus, some the milk run, and some will experience a few detours or road closures along the way. But your reliability and maintenance improvement efforts should really focus on driving that business value that aligns to your corporate goals. So it's important to start by knowing where you are, set your sights on a destination, and then taking our steps to close the distance there. Okay. And I'd like to open it up for questions. So that was hopefully not too much of a fire hose delivery. I'm going to stop sharing so that I can actually see all of you.
Well, I just sort of have a question comment. So my world was more manufacturing than oil and gas. Like I say, I spent a little bit of time at Penn West there. But one of the other components to this is when you look at being up and being available is meeting delivery requirements. You talked about in the oil and gas world, you know, your ability to continue to produce product. That is a little different in the manufacturing world in that typically you'll have a firm commitment date that you need to meet. It may not be that much different in oil and gas, obviously, but that's also a very important consideration because you know your equipment's down, and of course it always happens when you least expect it. and you can't foresee these things sometimes, like I say, a catastrophic failure. So scheduling, regular ongoing maintenance reduces that and increases the reliability, and actually even there are manufacturers that I competed against. Luckily, we were pretty good at this, but their reputation was, wow, yeah, they never deliver on time. And this was also a big factor in that, unexpected last minute, equipment going down and not being able to deliver.
Yeah, thanks, Louis. This is one of those things that you're right. I did talk about it more from the continuous processing industry perspective. One of the things we do when we're starting to bring in our predictive maintenance, often it's about monitoring that equipment health so we don't have these unexpected catastrophic failures. They should be very few and far between. We've really got a maintenance strategy around our equipment that takes into account our risks, our benefits, and then often what we put in there is when we start to do more predictive maintenance, we can anticipate on our PF curve where we are, and allows us to do better planning, scheduling, and bring the equipment down in a controlled fashion to minimize that mean time to repair. And we usually gives ourselves a couple weeks window, or ideally a couple months window, and we can schedule that when it's not likely to impact our production.
Yeah, we did a lot of maintenance after, like, we weren't necessarily running 24/7. So a lot of our maintenance activities were either in the evening or on weekends, at least the larger stuff, right? Where you weren't taking things out of production. And of course that goes back to planning, right? Versus broke this afternoon, so now you gotta panic and try to fix it. And then of course parts issues are always a problem. Getting those in a timely fashion, especially nowadays with the supply chain, it can be a bitch. I'm at a condo association, and we're talking about furnaces, right? And some of these furnaces are 10 or 15 years old, and they're failing, and you can't get parts. It's 4 weeks, 5 weeks for parts, right? And it's the wintertime. You can't have a unit without heat for 4 or 5 or 6 weeks. So it's forcing us to actually replace furnaces versus repairing them because we can't get parts. So even having the proper inventory, and so this applies to, I'm just still throwing this applies to almost every aspect of business. Not like I say, I know you've got a pretty strong oil and gas background, but this is generic. It crosses every industry.
It sounds like my suggested or typical business cases spoke to you and your background as well.
Susan, we have a hand up from Kelly.
Oh, hey, Kelly, how are you? I'm just trying to figure out if I see hands up. So Kelly, and then I see Louis Cabana next. So Kelly.
No worries, Susan. No, I liked your talk. One of the things that I wanted to ask you about was clients or people who believe they have a good project picked out for their next project, but maybe you see a better opportunity or a better option for them. How do you tackle that type of situation?
So frequently, whether we're inside of so I worked as an employee for a lot of years before I started going out. Often what we find is, back at the project in the select stage and you're assessing or evaluating them, I will actually run a typical business case for both of the options and say, okay, you know what, your pet project favorite solution here is going to give you this in terms of payback, NPV, ROI, and frequently we find that it is a positive one, and this is why people are excited by it. But if we can present an alternative to that and run the same calculations on the same basis, so maybe it's the internal rate of return using the same hurdle rate, maybe it is that sort of thing. Often what we find is the payback on the alternative may or may not be better than what the approach that people have their heart set on, depending on whether they tackle the same benefit. So if they're both relying on each other, sometimes you can get both projects through. Sometimes you'll do one or the other, or which case, but I find it helps. A lot of M&R folks are really excited about the technical side, but we got to speak the language of the boardroom. So we got to put it in dollars and the metrics that people are using to make their decision. Is that where you were headed, Kelly?
Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
No problem. I often find when they come forward to me, as I said, thanks, Michael. I often say, you know, if it cost twice as much, took twice as long, and got half the benefit, would it still have a payback of under a year? And, you know, I think that provides some reality on it. Luis Cabana, I'm not sure how to pronounce your name. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's the Spanish version, so Luis.
Luis.
Or Luis. Hello. I think it's all about context, right? And who you're selling to within the company. If you are selling to the maintenance people or to the operations people, they'll have a point of view, but definitely, as you said, board or ownership is where you should try to focus this sale. Because it's, you know, I come from a TOC background, theory of constraints, goal rat. So it's all about global throughput and global goals and not silos or organizationals. So the problem is that we are in organizations and they have, you know, set up local goals and local KPIs and local ownerships and all of that. But for sure, maintenance has to be viewed with holding costs in warehousing for parts and capacity for response in you know, routine maintenance and all of that, and safety and all of that. But it is all context dependent. I worked in a newspaper where you have hours to deliver a product. So you go for redundancy and overcapacity in all your systems, but you don't have, you know, the leisure of planning for a turnaround or for a off time on any machinery. So compare that to the other extreme, which would be like a big process plant. You can plan. You don't have to wait until the end of your month to produce. You should produce early, right? And actually, you should produce all the time, the most that you can, as long as the market is not the constraint. So, yeah, very interesting. Your talk, you're preaching to the choir, but who are you selling to and who's making the decision, right?
And I agree with you that operating context and understanding is really important, which is why I was suggesting you start with your corporate strategy and then you drill down into your asset management and into your M&R. One of the things, and part of the reason I thought I'd present this particular topic, is that I get asked about this on a weekly basis. So, and thanks, Louis Kelman. Often this topic seems to be coming back up over and over again. So we used to do this a lot. People moved away from it in the last couple of years. And I've had 3 calls in the last week on this topic alone. So this is telling me that it was time to refresh and to suggest some of these ideas forward again, just to jog people's memory. Or we've got a whole new group of people coming forward in the industry who are looking to present their improvement ideas forward. We've got new technology, we've got all of these other things. And I agree with you, Louis, that you want to look at it holistically from the company point of view or the overall organizational point of view, but we also need to look at it just at the local level in a way to take advantage of some of these smaller opportunities that can have a big impact on the bottom line. Thanks, admin. I'm just looking at the text chat here. It's hard to see the text chat while you're presenting, so now I'm checking it out. Are there any other questions?
Doesn't seem like it.
Well, I want to thank everyone for logging in. I do appreciate it. If you've got longer term questions or you want to reach out, please feel free to connect with me. And you've got my contact info.
And of course, this will be posted. So if you ever need to go back and get a refresher, check out our Resource YYC YouTube.
Okay,
Thanks,
thank you very much.
George.
Thank you, Susan.
Thank you. Okay, bye.
Bye.